my next question is for you, Carlos. In some states, as you mentioned, out of the 45, in 5 states, it does seem to be working well. States like Colorado, California, Massachusetts, where the Republican presidential nominee created Romneycare, which is actually the blueprint for Obamacare, and seems to be working very well. And the argument that Democrats make is that local and state governments that have embraced the Affordable Care Act, promoted it, and tried to make it work in ways that it was intended, are seeing healthcare costs go down and become very affordable, if not cheap. Keeping the website issues aside, what do you have to say about this, and about the fact that if states and their governors specifically supported the Affordable Care Act and implemented it like it was supposed to, perhaps it would work well?
Yeah, and I do see that from the very few states that are benefiting from this, but for the majority of us, we're actually seeing our health care premiums rise. So, for example, you mentioned Massachusetts. They've had a large free rider problem where people have the mandate to go into healthcare, but because they don't need it, people like you and me, very healthy individuals that don't see a reason for getting an extra cost of healthcare, they rather take the fine. But what happens when they get sick is that they take out a policy, they spend 4 times, if not more, of what a regular person would spend on their healthcare, and once they're done with whatever procedure, they drop it. Just implementing a law that says you can't do that is not going to prevent people from actually doing it. These states that have high regulations on the insurance market have seen their premiums rise, and as a product of Obamacare being implemented and these systems being a little more toned down, they're seeing their premiums go down a little bit, but that's only because they were so high up because of their regulations. For all of the rest of us that didn't have those regulations in place, we are seeing skyrocketing premiums, and that's a very big problem for people that can't put food on their table or afford quality health care.
Thank you. So my follow-up to that would be, how do you think that we can get the remaining 45 states on board with the 5 states where the law seems to be working well, or should we be even doing that in the first place?
Yeah, I would argue with that, because I would say that it's not about feeling confident that the law is going to work. It's actually if the law does work. And the consequences is all we should be worried about. And as we've seen in the 45 states, it's not working to do what we designed it to do, so we should definitely call it back. We should tell governors that since it's not working, we should stop the bleeding now and not have to deal with the larger problems in the future and for future generations, but deal with it now. And I would say the compromises that could be made could be done at the state level, and it could be fixed really nicely and with no collateral damage or very little.
Thank you. Austin, your rebuttal?
Well, my issue is that many of these states have the option to set up their own exchanges. The Affordable Health Care Act allowed them to create their own exchanges in order to do things that the states want to do. But many governors rejected that idea, conservative governors, and left it up to the federal government. Now, we know the federal exchange has had some issues due to the website, and now that is unacceptable. Now, the thing about the Affordable Care Act, though, is that this is a long-term piece of legislation. We can't say it's not working because enrollment has only been up for a month and a half so far. People haven't even been receiving coverage from their enrollment yet, because that's not scheduled until much further down the road. So we can't even assess how the law is working after year 1, much less after month 2. Now, I would argue that Kentucky is a state where only 1 in 6 people are uninsured. It's a state that needs expansion of healthcare the most, and its Democratic governor, Steve Beshear, is fighting to make sure that as much people enroll in their state exchange as they can. And as of October 25th, 24,000 people had enrolled in either Medicaid expansion or the state exchange. I respect the Republicans' disagreements with this law, but you can still fight a law at the legislation level, but you can also implement it at the executive level as well. And if you did that, I think we would see that costs for everyone would, at least the growth in costs would be bending, rather than things skyrocketing because people aren't implementing the law like they were supposed to.